What's going on, everyone? It is Wednesday, October 10th, and I am so ready to break down UFC 229. Let's talk some Bellator and all that. So I know most people are tuning in to hear my reactions to UFC 229, so I need you guys to bear with me because I want to go chronologically. So I don't get too crazy, too out of order, because there was a lot of great moments, a few bad moments, not as bad as many claim it was, but that's my opinion, and I'll get into that later. So let's just talk UFC 229 really quick. We'll start off with the pay-per-view itself. Michelle Waterson defeated Felice Herrig via unanimous decision. It was a good fight, and the first time I watched the fight, obviously I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, so just some background. I've never hosted a UFC party. I usually cannot stand people over when there is boxing or MMA going on because I actually like to pay attention and I don't want to be engaged in the party side. But I figured, you know what, biggest UFC card of all time. People are asking me what I'm doing for it. So I said, sure, come over. So I didn't pay that much attention. What I did see, I thought Felice won the fight. Went back, rewatched it like I should, and it was closer than I think a lot of people gave it, but I did give it to Michelle after rewatching it. But very good fight. I love Michelle Waterson. She went on to say she wants to be the first mom female champion. So good for her. Huge fan of her. Then Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov. Wow, what do you say? What can you say about this fight? Volkov dominated Derek Lewis, and I just rewatched it again this afternoon. He had him seriously hurt, even though Derek didn't go down, but he had him seriously hurt 4 or 5 times in the first 2 rounds. And Alexander Volkov, to you, your coaches, anyone that hasn't seen that fight, you're dominating the fight. It's the last 14 seconds, and you decide to throw a knee to the body. Derek Lewis was huge. Derek Lewis has huge power. That's his thing. He's not technical, doesn't have great cardio, big guy, big power. He was looking for the simple 1-2 the whole fight, and was not, it was barely missing. And if you get hit by any shot from Derek Lewis, you're in some trouble. So what does Volkov do? Last 10 seconds, he's dominating the fight, throws a knee to the body, and Derek connects with that 1-2 and finishes him off on the ground. Hey, what are you doing? Why in the world would you think it's okay? You were 1 fight away. You were 10 seconds away from a title shot to fight Daniel Cormier possibly for the title. A fight that honestly favors you in a lot of areas. And you decide to throw a knee to the body. Am I upset? No, because I really like Derek Lewis. So I'm happy for Derek Lewis to get the win, but what in the world was he thinking? I do not know. He literally could have done anything but that. Run away. Run in circles like Conor did in the Nate Diaz 2 fight because you're tired. Even though you weren't tired, do anything but that. That was a really bad decision. But props to Derek Lewis. Don't want to take anything away from him. He's got serious power, and now he's fighting for the title at Madison Square Garden, which we will get into. Many of you know my heartache with that whole situation. It's a little bit better now, but still not great. Then Ovince St. Preux gets beat by Dominic Reyes via decision. Not much to say about that fight. Reyes now undefeated, 11-0, I believe. Looked dominant. Not an easy task to beat OSP. OSP always gives basically everyone a pretty tough run, so good for Dominic. Co-main event, Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. there is someone online, and I don't want to mention names because I don't remember your name, but I know we're friends on Facebook, and I know you follow me on Instagram. You called me crazy for saying that Tony Ferguson would have problems with Anthony Pettis. I said that. You said I was crazy. Here's why I said it. And if you listen to the last episode, I said this as well. I called it. I thought Tony Ferguson would win. It was an easy decision. It was an easy pick for me. The reason I think, which came out to be true, that Pettis would give Ferguson problems is because guys that have good footwork and good movement give Ferguson issues. Ferguson dominates against guys that completely walk forward at all times. He has issues with guys that can move with good footwork, and obviously Anthony Pettis has very, very dynamic odd striking. Well, what happened? Ferguson dominated until Anthony Pettis dropped him twice. And then what happened at the end of the second round, Anthony Pettis told his corner, Duke Rufus, my hand's broken. Duke throws in the towel and says, no, we're not doing this, which I completely agree. I think in MMA, trainers don't, they let their fighters go too much. They let them get too hurt. Look, with one hand against Tony Ferguson, your night's not going, it's not going to get any better. He was already bloodied up, even though he dropped Tony, but he was already bloodied up. But it was good to see Tony back in there, and it was good, to see Pettis have he was having fun in there, which was good to see. So, now we get to the main event. Goodness, where do we start? Okay, so I'm going to, like I said, trying to break this down in chronological order. Conor McGregor walks out first. First thing I notice is he's dry. What that means is there was no sweat in his hair, no sweat in his body. You could tell that if he did warm up in the back, it wasn't much. I don't know if he warmed up in the back, and that's a serious issue. Does it have to do with him having 2 years off? Possibly. Does it have to do with overconfidence? Very possible. So he walks out. He does the Conor McGregor thing. He's looking like Conor McGregor. Khabib walks out. It's not Khabib, it's Khabib. And he looks unfazed. He looks very unfazed. So round one starts. Conor doesn't look like himself, and I'm going to get back to this. I said before the fight started in my last episode, I picked Conor because of his movement. Everyone talks about Conor's power, but I don't believe that it's just his power that wins fights. It's his movement, because when he makes certain movements, it freezes fighters. They don't know what to do, and as soon as they start thinking, Conor hits them. But I'll readdress that later. Conor throws a big left hand and is walking Khabib down. Khabib, not Khabib. And Khabib goes for the takedown, and Conor defends it very well. Way better than a lot of casual fans. Oh, let me explain this, by the way. I know this is the biggest fight of all time, so a lot of the casual fans tuned in for this when they bought the pay-per-view, but the next morning, they all became MMA experts after watching like their fourth MMA fight. I wish it was that easy. I wish someone told me that earlier, by the way. Man, if I knew it was that easy to become an expert, and I don't even call myself that, there's a small percentage that actually deserve to post their opinions on social media about the fight game because they simply know very little. I digress. That takedown defense from Conor was very, very good at first. But Khabib did what Khabib does, and he got him to the ground. Laid on top of him, smashed him. Second round. Again, to address these people that know very little about the sport. Khabib's striking is not better than Conor McGregor's, and this is not. I'm a fan of both guys. I'm equally a fan of both. I love Khabib and I love Conor. His striking is not better than Conor McGregor's. Because Conor got hit with a big overhand right means very little in the conversation of whose stand-up is better. When Conor got hit with that overhand right, he was looking down and had his arms down and his chin up. Why would a striker have his arms down, his hands down, versus a wrestler? It's very simple. When you have such a dominant wrestler, you keep the hands down because when they shoot for a takedown, it's easier to defend that takedown. So what Khabib did, which he's done in the past, he looks like he's going for the takedown and then throws the overhand right, which Conor was very upset that he got caught with that. In my opinion, it was a mix between him getting rocked and a slip, if you look at the way Conor was moving. But it was a knockdown. Congratulations to Khabib for landing that punch. Very, very great job by Khabib. So Conor comes back, lands a knee, has a little bit of success. Khabib takes him down again and smashes him, and then you can hear Khabib saying, let's talk now. Round ends, Conor takes a lot of damage. Third round starts, and now Conor has a glimpse of some success. Very good on his feet, defends 3 or 4 takedowns, which the crowd went crazy as soon as that happened because it was a very heavy, 20% of ticket sales were the Irish, and this fight was in Vegas, so pretty crazy stat for you. So the crowd goes crazy. I believe Conor won the 3rd round, and post-fight, now it's been released, the judges actually had Conor winning that round, which Khabib had never lost a round in the past. Ever. So 4th round starts. All right, we all know how it went. Khabib gets him down. Conor gives us back. And I don't like that they called it a rear naked choke. I do not like that people call it a rear naked choke. So a very good breakdown of what it was, and it's not completely hard to understand. And I these MMA quote unquote experts that have seen 4 MMA cards in their life that say, well, it wasn't under the neck. Trust me, Conor, you, me, if we were all put in that same position, we would hope it was under the neck, because that neck crank that he had him in can break your jaw quite easily. I would rather be put to sleep than that pain, that bone pain in my face, thinking that my face is going to break. Fight over, and here's where the drama starts. Ladies and gentlemen, let me preface this by saying it is not as big of a deal as the MMA media, the commentators, as much as I love those commentators, as everyone makes it sound. I'm watching this whole thing go down, and it's crazy. My friends are going crazy, but look, I've seen a lot crazier, and so have we all. Khabib jumps the cage and goes after Dylan Dennis. Then a fight ensues. Now, was he wrong by doing it? 100%. 2 wrongs don't make a right. But we've seen way worse. So then what happens is Conor is now reacting to, he sees Khabib going after his team. He hops over the cage and he sees one of Khabib's guys jumping in the cage. And I've heard so many times that, well, Conor threw the first punch, so that's not self-defense. That is complete bullshit, and let me explain to you why. A smart person and a talented fighter doesn't let someone put their hands on them if they can defend it. If someone is bum rushing you and you have the wherewithal and the skill to punch them before they get to you, that is still self-defense. And look, I'm not saying Khabib was right and Conor's done way wrong, and I will get to that. He's done way worse than that. But you cannot make the argument that, well, Conor hit him first, so he deserved what he had coming to him. That is a piss-poor argument, because only stupid people or people that don't know how to defend themselves let themselves get hit before anything. So while the whole fight is going on, one of Khabib's guys, I can't pronounce his name. He's a UFC fighter, or was a UFC fighter. He won't be fighting in the UFC any longer. Starts hitting Conor. Watched it again today. One of the bitchest moves I've ever seen is a professional. So there was a man in black and the man in red. The man in black is a current UFC fighter. He's Khabib's training partner. The other one in the red who jumps over the cage behind Conor is Khabib's longtime friend. So he waits until the guy in the red, can't say his name, it's Russian, it's hard, forgive me. He waits until Conor is already engaged to tee off on him from behind. So not only does he hit him from behind, but he waits until he's already in a fight. That is some of the most chicken shit stuff I've seen from quote-unquote professional Russian Dagestan gangsters. So that's what happens. The outcome. I do not think that it ruined Khabib's night. And I want to make something perfectly clear to all you quote-unquote experts again saying, well, Khabib should be suspended. That's not how it works. The UFC will not suspend him. They will not strip his title. Dana has already said that. The only suspension that he may face is from the state commission. It's not the UFC, it's the state athletic commission. The only way the UFC would possibly suspend Khabib is if strip his title, is if an athletic commission suspends him for an ungodly amount of time, let's say 6 months to a year. But to say that the UFC should take his title and suspend him, you clearly don't know how the process works. It's not me attacking you, this is me informing you. And if you don't know, moving forward, ask me. I'll inform you before you look silly on social media. So, all that happens. Two wrongs don't make a right. And I want to address really quick this, this is the worst thing we've seen in UFC history. Oh, let me remind you. Conor threw a dolly through a bus window. Could have ended Michael Chiesa's career or whoever else was standing by the window. Let's not forget John Jones. He's tested positive twice. And he hit a pregnant woman in a hit-and-run accident. And those are just some recent ones. There's more, you can look into it. The UFC allowing Brock Lesnar to fight on UFC 200 against Mark Hunt without drug testing him via USADA. And then charging him afterwards and letting him come back for a UFC heavyweight title fight when he is 0-2-1, that one being a no contest, the fight I was just talking about. And this is all just recent stuff, guys. So before we jump to conclusions saying jumping over the cage and there was a little bit of a fist fight, was it right? No. 100% it wasn't right. But there's way worse stuff that has happened in the history of the UFC, and people deserve to be fined a lot harder than what the fans are calling for Khabib. That covers that. Also, maybe we want to talk what's next. In my mind, you do the rematch. Doesn't make sense for Conor as far as skill-wise because Khabib dominated him as far as the wrestling went. He gave him his first loss in one round. But as far as the money-making goes, look, if Conor does the Conor Nate 3 fight and he loses, that Khabib fight does not happen. Conor Khabib 2 makes more money than Nate Conor 3. And I guarantee that. And the numbers in the past and the numbers that come out from this pay-per-view will prove that. Trust me. Should they do the immediate rematch? In my mind, no. I think you have to do Khabib versus Tony, because Tony definitely deserves that fight. You see where things go from there. I think Tony should hope for actually some sort of 4 to 6 month suspension for Khabib, because that gives his knee more time to heal. If you know the short history behind Tony's knee, he came back super fast for this fight. That's a fight was supposed to happen 4 times by now, but has not happened. So, you got to do that one first. Maybe you give Conor a tune-up fight just to keep him, relevant in the top 5. I think that's what you do there. Because that rematch is huge. That story is way too good. And I also want to say, again, not that it's right, but when a man like Conor McGregor talks crap about your family, your manager, your religion, and everyone's surprised that all this happened, and now we're confused because we're lost. What do you mean there was a fight that broke out at an MMA fight? The biggest MMA card of all time, and there's a fight that broke out with all the hype? It's not that surprising, guys. It's not at all. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. But I tell you what, Khabib jumping into Conor's boys like that, that's going to make a great promo. So Conor cut the first great promo with the dolly into the bus. Khabib just made the second best promo by jumping into Conor's boys. All right, guys. That covers my thoughts on UFC 229. Great card. Derek Lewis is hilarious. Going to talk Derek Lewis here in a minute. But let's get into some MMA news, man. So, mymmanews.com. Love these guys. Write for them. They're awesome. Most recent news. Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis for the heavyweight title. A few things about this card now that I was very upset about it because Sijara Eubanks versus Valentina Shevchenko was going to headline it. And as I stated in my previous episode, look, you can make an argument that both deserve it. Definitely Valentina. Maybe Sijara. But at the end of the day, Sijara's pissed off. But look, Sijara Eubanks, no one knows you. I know of you because I was one of the 17 people that watched that episode of The Ultimate Fighter. Maybe you could headline a fight night at this point in your career. You're 3-2 with 1 win in the UFC. Do not believe that you are Madison Square Garden material, in my personal opinion. And most people in the MMA world would agree with me. So with that said, I understand it's unfortunate for Sijara Eubanks, but we gained a good main event, not a great one. Honestly, I think Derek Lewis gets dealt with by Daniel Cormier. However, it's a very risky fight for Daniel Cormier as he has the big money fight against Brock Lesnar coming up. So, we better hope that he doesn't lose. So, he retains the right to that money fight with Brock Lesnar. Aside from my feelings of Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier is my favorite fighter, so I want the best for that guy. We lost Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier has to pull out because of an injury. Nate says he's not fighting. He says he'll fight Khabib. Excuse me. See, I listen to you MMA experts too much. He says he will fight Khabib when he is ready, which basically means he's not fighting for a long time unless that Conor 3 fight happens. What else did we lose? So we lost Valentina Shevchenko completely. Don't know the future of Sijara Eubanks yet. So Valentina Shevchenko will be fighting my girl Joanna Jędrzejczyk, UFC 231, I believe it is, in Toronto. Yep, same card as Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. So that fight that was originally supposed to happen is back on. So, New York, Madison Square Garden, it's in a better place, I believe, but it sucks we can't see Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz. Whatever that injury is for Dustin, hope it gets better, and would still like to see Nate on that card. And, we got a big fight with DC and Derek Lewis, the funniest guy in the game. Great post-fight interview speech. And I quote, Joe Rogan, why'd you take your pants off? Derek Lewis, because my balls was hot. If you haven't seen that post-fight interview, you have to go watch it. It's hilarious. So there's that. We've got Jose Aldo calling out Conor, saying, you can't run anymore. Yeah, that fight doesn't happen again. Sorry, not a big enough draw for Conor for him to do that. And, I think that's it. That's really the only big current news. Oh, no, excuse me. This just dropped probably about an hour before I started recording. John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson 2 in I believe it's the New Year's Eve card. So good. That's going to be a great fight. I'll probably take Gus winning that fight, just seeing John Jones in his first time back against Ovince St. Preux, the one time, his first comeback where he didn't test positive for anything. He looked like ass. And in my opinion, compared to the John Jones that we all know and love or hate. But it's going to be a great fight, man. Can't wait for that one. Glad these fight cards are actually starting to fill up and make sense, even post UFC 229. And even after UFC 229, I think the loss that Conor McGregor suffered does more good than harm in the long run, because the UFC has lived and died by the Conor McGregor way of promoting fights. What I mean by that is, yes, does he show up and do his job, and he does it outstanding? Of course he does, and yes, he has. But living on that business model is a very, very dangerous thing. So now you're going to have guys that, and when there's not Conor McGregor, we've seen the numbers suffer very significantly. So now that that Conor McGregor really is not completely out of the scene, because he's still one of the UFC's biggest superstars, and I really think that this fight card helped a lot of fighters, to include Khabib. Definitely helped Derek Lewis, as his social media following literally doubled. And he's been talking like this funny stuff. He's been doing this every fight card, but you guys just didn't tune into it. Shame on you. Be more into the sport. That's your fault. But I think this does a good thing for the UFC now that they don't have to have the Conor McGregor mentality and business model that he has set forth. I believe they're going to suffer a lot at first, but this card opened a lot of fans' eyes, even the casual fans, to a lot of stars in this sport. Which is why, after seeing Derek Lewis and his social media following double overnight, now he's headlining the next pay-per-view, which is awesome. Makes sense. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it helps the numbers. All right, guys, so that covers UFC 229 drama, a little bit of UFC 230 in Madison Square Garden. I'm glad that's getting figured out. Now let's do some just quick fight predictions. We've got 2 fights, Friday and Saturday, in Bellator. So I'll start with Friday. Look, the main event in this one is Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader's Bellator's light heavyweight champion. They are now doing the heavyweight tournament. This is the semifinal. Friday and Saturday's main events are the semifinals. So obviously whoever wins these fights will meet each other. Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader. This is a great style matchup. Mitrione on his feet, very awkward, very good movement. But Ryan Bader is, he's a great wrestler, and in this one, I really like both guys, but I'll take Bader, man. I'll take Bader via third round TKO. I think he takes him down. Eventually, Matt gets tired. He's got more weight to carry around, and I think Ryan Bader takes him down and finishes him on the ground. Then co-main event, we've got Roy Nelson versus Sergey Kharitonov. If you know anything about Kharitonov, man, that guy's an absolute monster. Against Roy Nelson, Roy Nelson's a knockout artist, of course. I'll take Kharitonov, though. Roy Nelson in his last few fights hasn't exactly looked like himself of old. So I'll take Sergey Karatanov. Lorenz Larkin, he is fighting, I think this is his third opponent. He was supposed to fight 2 other guys and they dropped out. He's fighting Ion Pascu. Haven't heard of this guy before, but I'm such a Lorenz Larkin fan that I'll take Larkin all day. Baby Slice. It's Kimbo Slice's son. You guys might remember Kimbo Slice. He is quite the legend in the combat sports world, street fighting and MMA. And his son has looked very good in the 4 fights I've seen him in. I'll take Baby Slice all day. So that covers the fights I want to cover there. Now let's get into Saturday, which could be the biggest Bellator fight of all time. Yeah, so here we'll just talk the co-main and the main event. Got Benson Henderson, UFC former world champ versus Sadawad. Sadawad has some very convincing wins in Bellator, and this is at 155. I will take Benson Henderson. It's very rare that I'm going to pick against Benson. He's a monster. And then this could possibly lead up to make the biggest Bellator fight in history as far as the views. Fedor Emelianenko, long time known as the greatest heavyweight in the world, greatest pound-for-pound fighter in the world, even though he never fought in the UFC, versus Chael Sonnen. Wow, man. So I really like both guys. Again, Fedor the Russian, Chael the American. Fedor, great on his feet, crazy knockout power. Can't believe what he did to Frank Mir as fast as he did. And Chael Sonnen is a absolute monster on the ground, great wrestler. I do believe the size of Fedor is going to be an issue for Chael. I thought that Fedor's only chance of winning would be to knock him out. And I thought that Chael's only chance of winning would be to take him down. But to see what Fedor did to Frank Mir made me realize maybe his toolbox is a little bit more than what people thought. I'll take Fedor via second round KO. I think he knocks out Chael Sonnen. That hurts my heart to say because I love Chael Sonnen. All right, guys, that covers it. UFC 229, the drama. I think it goes to a rematch. They cut the best promo unintentionally. It's part of the story. I love it. It was a great night. Talk some current events via mymmanews.com. Love those guys over there. And got to cover some Bellator 207, 208 this Friday and this Saturday, live and free on Paramount Network if you get it, or DAZN. It's on both, I think. Yeah. All right. So live and free on Paramount. Make sure you guys tune in. I promise you will you'll definitely enjoy it. So until next time, guys, be good to each other.